Heart Coherence Collaborative. We could not be more excited to have Neale Donald Walsch with us. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, guys. It's lovely to be here with you. I've always enjoyed my time, my visit with you, and as long as you ask me questions that I can answer, I'm going to enjoy this today as well.
Awesome.
But no trick questions.
We might have a couple trick questions.
Okay, well, I'm out of here. Thanks for being with me.
He's left the building. I just want to say this is really a dream come true for me. You're one of the people who conversations with God really changed my life. And Kyle is a man who can make anything happen, it feels like. So I said, please, could you get Neale Donald Walsch on with us? And he really made that dream come true.
Well, you know, a check for $12,000 didn't hurt.
Yeah, you don't know about that. So.
He paid you to come on. And, you know, I feel called to share, and I probably will cry saying this, but we had started recording this probably a little less than 2 months ago. And at that time, my dog was sick. He was at the end of his being sick. And it was such a big deal for me for you to come on that I wanted to do anything to make that happen. But, you know, he was at the stage where he kind of needed attention, and I was afraid he might be whining. And I expressed that to you, and you were so easygoing to just say that we could reschedule it. And you can, you know, come on here and talk all you want about God, and a lot of people do. But just that moment of kindness and how gracious you were.
Yeah.
It really meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that to me. I know it was a joyous moment in the experience of your dear, sweet companion. And, but sometimes those joyous departures, those joyous returns home by our loved companions in life are not so joyous for us. It's difficult for us to, at least in that moment, to move through the intense loss, you know, of the physical presence of that loved one. So, and no one has to be told about that. I lost my wonderful dog companion years ago now, but she had been with me 17 years. And sure enough, it would happen that I was on a journey in Europe. I couldn't even get back in time. I was in Europe, and I got a call from my home saying that Lady, which is her name, had chosen to leave. And I always regretted that I wasn't physically there for her. But I also knew that it was her choice, her decision, and her time. And she had, served her soul's agenda mightily during all the 17 years that we were companions. She was a savior dog. You know, we got her from the kennel. They were going to put her to sleep, actually, because at the kennel in our community, you can only keep an animal that's been found and brought to the kennel for like 10 days. And then after 10 days, they have to put the animal down because they don't have room enough for all the ones that are being found, you know, on the street who are homeless. So we were going through this kennel support for animal lovers, and we saw that she had 1 day left. And I just said to the operators of the kennel, there's the one. She's looking for a home. And she was with us for 17 years. So no one has to tell me. And now I have two wonderful little dogs that I've had now for, interestingly enough, ironically enough, for 17 years.
Wow.
The same number of years, and they're both with us. They're little lap dogs. And so no one has to explain to me about the experience of loss and about the experience of love for all living creatures. You know, I have an interesting companion that I live with, my wonderful wife, and her love for living creatures is so much that she refuses to squat a mosquito or heard a fly, or when she sees a spider in the house, she runs to get a glass and see if she can catch the spider, and put something under the glass, and then run over to the window and or go outside with it, and put it back into nature. I mean, I'm going to write a book one day called "She Saves Spiders." It's a wonderful title, and it captures the opportunity that we all have on this planet to fall in love with and be in love with and stay in love with every living creature. Trees, grass, animals, pets, goldfish, insects, flies, ants, spiders, and of course, the person across the pillow.
Yeah.
So that, I didn't mean to turn a sermon, turn our commentary into a sermon, but you touched a part of me that's still very much connected to the experience of Lady. And of course, I would understand when you explained to me what happened 2 months ago.
Yeah. Wow. I too was taken back by how generous you were. And since that time, I've kind of like really went into all of your materials. And one interview that really blew me away was your interview with Eckhart Tolle.
Yes.
It was really funny. So if anyone's watching, I highly recommend you watch it. But you start out by basically saying like, that you still struggle with taking this spirituality sometimes home with your wife, with the people in the workplace. And Eckhart just does such a amazing job of staying that way all the time. When we were with you, I felt like you embody that God presence all the time. And in your book, Essential Path, you talk about, separation from God, right? And how that's kind of like this illusion that so many of us have that leads to our suffering. My question to you is if you could talk a little bit more about this separateness from God, and then how does one go about staying in that connection? Because I, like yourself, as you were describing it to Eckhart, go in and out all the time. It's here, it's not. I can be really spiritual and then I can be really disconnected. So I would just love your advice on that.
Stay connected.
Okay. Thank you.
Drop the mic.
And let me expand on that a little bit. We live in an interesting culture, Kyle. Our whole culture, that is humanity's culture, by and large, has been taught by its many religions, and there are over 4,000 religions on the earth right now. And that's not a number I made up, it's an actual count. You can Google that and ask the Google search engine, how many faith traditions are there currently being practiced on the earth today? I think it's something like 4,200. So, but most of our faith traditions have told us and taught us that there is a higher power, but that it is something that's other than us, separate from us. And in fact, some of those religions would tell us that if we imagine that we are not separate from that higher power, that we are actually blaspheming or committing heresy, and so we should not even think of ourselves in that way as being connected to the divine. So it's not unusual then that we find ourselves in a psychological profile, most of us, of feelings simply separate from the higher power in which we believe. Surveys have shown, by the way, that 8 out of 10 people in the world do believe in a higher power. That question has been asked by sociologists around the world in the past 10 years. Do you believe in a higher power? And 8 out of 10 people say yes. But the one major belief that most of people hold is the belief that we are in fact separate from that higher power. It is the the essence that we call in by many names in various languages or various faith traditions: God, Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, Brahman. There are many names for this higher power, but rarely do people believe that they are one with the higher power, that the higher power and us, we are all one. So in recent times, we've heard more and more about the oneness of everything. Both science and spirituality, it continues to bring us that message in larger and larger and more meaningful ways. So, like you, I move in and out of that. I was told in my conversation with God that, that it was, by the way, the first message in almost 3,000 pages of dialogue. The very first message I received in my conversation with God is, we are all one. All things are one thing. There is only one thing, Neale, and all things are part of the one thing there is. And so I realized that the invitation I was receiving from what I want to call God was the invitation to step into the experience of that, into the truth of that. And I realized further that that was the whole purpose of life itself, my human existence, that I came here into the physical reality in order to find myself, place myself in a contextual field that allowed me to experience my oneness with the divine, to experience, dare I say it, it's a kind of a daring thing to say, but to experience my divinity. And when I talk that way in front of audiences, I sometimes get into a wee bit of trouble because somebody will actually stand up in the back of the room and say, "Oh, Neale, are you coming here to tell us that you think that you're God? That you and God are, that you and God are one?" They don't really think, to be fair to my critics, they don't really think that I imagine that I'm God, but they do think that I'm saying that God and I are one. And they're right about that. I am saying that. So this upsets people because it violates or runs against, as I just said, what is taught to us by virtually every religion on the face of the earth. So I have to explain, I am not saying that I am identical to God in the sense of being all that God is, but I am saying I am, if I could use an analogy, as a wave is to the ocean. When the wave arises from the surface of the ocean, it's not something other than the ocean, nor is it separate from the ocean. It is simply the ocean expressing individually and arising in a magnificent, powerful, glorious, beautiful individual form. And when that individual expression is complete, the wave recedes back into the ocean whence it came to arise again on another day. But it is in no way something separate from or other than the ocean itself. Nor would it be accurate to say that it is the ocean in fullness, but it is an individual expression of the ocean, and proportionate to its size, brings forth into physical world all the beautiful, wonderful aspects of divinity itself. So I have been given that analogy in my conversations with God, and it's what I use to allow myself to remember who I am, why I'm here, and what's going on when I feel that I've lost touch with the divine. Now, one last thing, I'm sorry, I'm giving you a here I go again. You're going to ask me 30-second questions, and I'm going to give you 12-minute answers to every one. But this is not an unimportant question. So with your permission, I would just add one final thought. When the moments arise in my life where I feel that I've lost touch with that essence in the world that I call God, I recontextualize what's occurring. That is, I allow myself to see it, to see that moment as an opportunity, not opposition, but opportunity, a chance that my life is bringing me again, that I want to say I co-created with others in my life purposefully to bring me an opportunity to notice once again, this is a separate moment when I think I'm not who I really am. But it's not a sad time. It's a time to celebrate. It's like the doorbell ringing, and the most beloved friend has just arrived again at the front door. And so I'm really glad when I have those moments, and I see myself as being given the opportunity to step into again my experience of oneness with the divine. And that's why that moment occurred. It's all part of the larger, in my opinion, I could be wrong about all of this, but that's what I've come to understand. And that it serves the larger agenda of my life itself, which is evolution. Kyle, I believe that all of life in every form, not just human form, but all forms of life, including the solar system itself, which of course is a living entity, the entire universe. All of life in all of its forms is simply evolving, becoming the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever it imagined itself to be. So we see an expanding universe and an expanding soul called Kyle and Leah, and maybe even on a good day, Neale. And we see these souls expanding into the next grandest expression of its true identity. This is the greatest joy of that entity that I call God. The greatest joy is to expand and become more and more and more of itself through the sharing and expressing of itself with every aspect of life that has emerged from it. And I call that pure love. The essence of itself is what I call pure love. So, Kyle, the next time anything comes up in your life, any moment when you see yourself as not really fully expressing your connection with the divine, just imagine the doorbell ringing. Ah, yeah, she's here.
Yes.
She came back, and we opened the door, and there he is, God itself, saying, may I come in and be one with you again? And we say, yes, welcome. And we welcome God back into our life with joy and celebration.
So that leads me to think about, and I think there's a good analogy in saving the spider. I think the hardest parts of really having the feeling like we're all one is when, whether it's personal or on a large scale, the spiders, the people in our life who are really hard, the people who are hard to not brand as even pure evil. How do we relate to personalities individually and when we look at the world that really, I have an easy time feeling like I'm one with people who are easy to love.
Yes, well, it's easy to love those who are easy to love.
Yes.
But I wonder if pure love, true love, is the expression of God's grandest feeling projected onto those who are not easy to love. In fact, those who we disagree with profoundly, those whose actions we can't understand even a little. That's, I think, the essence of pure love. And so the question becomes how to get there. And I've gotten there by a very circuitous route. Incidentally, it's taken me probably 7 or 8 years to find a way to use the word circuitous in a sentence.
Good job.
Yeah.
Not an easy word to slip into an ordinary conversation. But I've gotten to this place that you're describing by a very circuitous route. And this began when it was made clear to me by God that God would never forgive me for anything. And I was so shocked when God said that to me. Please understand that I will never forgive you for anything.
Mm.
And I said to God, I don't understand. You're telling me, please understand. I don't understand it. If there was one thing that even religions have taught us about God, is that you forgive people, especially if they, do what you ask and pray to God and try to be good people, that you forgive people. And God said to me, why would I forgive you when you cannot hurt, damage, injure, upset, anger, or frustrate me in any way, that nothing you could ever do could cause me to feel the need to forgive you? And I thought about that for a minute, and God said, Neale, have you ever held a baby in your arms? And I mean an infant, 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 weeks old. I said, yes, actually, I've had that experience, and more than once. I have 9 children of my own, and I've been blessed to hold in my arms small babies of others in my family and my circle of friends. So yes, I've often held a wonderful infant in my arms. And God said to me, and if the infant had, while she was in your arms, an unfortunate biological accident, would you feel that you had to forgive the baby? Would you say, oh, don't worry, sweetheart, I forgive you? And I said, well, no, of course, I wouldn't have to forgive an 8-week-old baby for anything. I mean, it wouldn't matter what it was. And God said, why not? And I said, well, because I would understand completely how such a thing could occur in the life of an 8-week-old baby. And God said to me, and you don't think that my understanding is equal to your own?
Mm.
But you do know that I see you, my beloved Neale, as an 8-week-old child. Relative to the age of the universe, you're an infant. And that doesn't mean that I want you to continue doing the things you're doing if they're not in alignment with who you really are, with who we really are. But it does mean that I totally understand how you could say the things you sometimes say, do the things you sometimes do. I understand. So Neale, remember this always. Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. Write that on your bathroom mirror.
Mm.
Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. And when we understand how a person could behave the way they're behaving, how even those with whom we vehemently disagree could do and say the things they're doing and saying. When we understand that, that doesn't mean we suddenly approve of it or condone it or hope that they repeat it. But it does mean that we understand how they could have done or said what they did or said. I want to share with you a little incident to make this real, not just theoretical. A man who called himself John Paul II, he happened to be one of the popes of the Roman Catholic Church, was riding through a motorcade years ago. He's since left his physical body, but when he was still with us here on earth, he was driving through a motorcade, and a man stepped out of a crowd and shot him 6 times.
Mm.
And every bullet hit him, none missed. He was literally riddled with bullets in his entire body. Of course, they rushed him to the hospital, and everyone around this man jumped all over him, and they dragged him off to jail. And the Pope miraculously survived his injuries. They did not think he would live, but somehow or another, the Pope survived. And weeks later, when he was totally healed, he visited the jail cell of the man who attempted to kill him. That man, of course, had been tried very quickly by the Italian authorities and sentenced to life in prison for attempting to assassinate the Pope. The Pope went to his jail cell. This is a matter of history, by the way. I'm not making this up. Of course, the media was all over this because they follow him wherever he goes. As you imagine, you can't make a move without the world media listening and watching everything he says and does. So he goes to the jail cell of this attempted assassin. And he said something very interesting to the man who tried to kill him. Can you imagine what he said? He said, "In nomine Patri et Filii Spiritus Sancti, Amen." He blessed the man. He gave the man his papal blessing. And when the man said, "Why are you saying that to me?" the Pope replied, "Well, you know, my friend, I've been taught a very interesting lesson by a very interesting guy. This guy said, bless your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you, and do good to those who would do you evil. And if a man slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer him your left. And if a man steals your coat, give him your shirt as well. And if a man demands that you walk 1 mile with him, go with him twain. And raise not your fist to heaven, and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well." Of course, the attempted assassin was speechless. He didn't know really what to say. But the Pope said, "I have a favor to ask of you. Could you simply tell me why?" The Pope said, "You know, I don't condone, I don't agree with what you did. And I would hope that nobody would ever repeat such a thing, not just with a Pope, but with anybody, really. I would love to know why." And the man said, "Well, I can tell you why." He said, "I believe that your church, the church that you are the head of, has done more to injure and to hurt my own culture and my own religion than any other single institution in the world. Because I'm a Muslim, and your church has done more to injure and to damage the Muslim faith and people of that faith than any other organization I can think of." So I was angry and just doing what I call serving justice. And the Pope said, "Well, you know, I don't agree with your solution, but I do understand how that could have caused you to do what you did. And because I understand it, I've come here now, having heard what I thought I would hear from you, because I presumed that that was at least part of your reasoning. I've come here to give you my papal blessing and to humbly ask you to receive it in the spirit in which it was given. Not the spirit of forgiveness, but simple understanding." There's a question I was told in my conversations with God that we can ask whenever we think of anyone else who we are having a hard time loving. What hurts them so much that they feel they have to hurt me in order to heal it? That's a really profound question. I've even used it in my own life with people who are close to me, who are having a little quarrel or a little disagreement, or even may have been a little bit cruel to me for some reason. It's the great argument stopper of all time. Because I've often said in the middle of a spat, a little bit of a disagreement, moment of unpleasantness, where someone else is throwing even unkind, impatient words at me, I've had the occasion to say to that person, "What hurts you so much that you feel you have to hurt me in order to heal it?" The argument is over and turns into an entirely different exchange between people who love each other and have simply had a difficult moment. And if they're really open to the question, they can open themselves to the answer. They can look at what is hurting them so much that they feel they have to lash back at the other person. And suddenly the two become one once again, because understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. So that's my 14-minute answer to your 30-second question. How do I deal with people that are difficult to love? Oh, I see. Also, one last thing. I ask myself, have there been moments in my life when it's been difficult for people to love me? You guys are shaking your heads.
I know some of those moments.
But in my world, I can't think of a single moment in my life when my behavior has been such that people couldn't find me completely adorable and totally lovable. But I have a suspicion that some others who know me may have a little bit of a different opinion about that. So when I get in touch with the fact that, oh, I too, difficult as it is to believe, I too have behaved in moments when people might not have approved of or appreciated what I was doing or saying. Truth be told, to set humor aside for just a moment, I've done and said some things in my life that I'm not even a little bit okay with. And if I could reach back over my shoulder and undo them, I would. But I can't. And when I ask God, what do I do about that? How do I deal with that sadness, that deep sense of regret that I can't undo those things that I did or said? She said to me, sweetheart, don't worry about undoing your past. Worry about and choose to be redoing your future. Remake your idea of yourself. What if you thought that every moment of your life, every disappointment, every upset, every joy as well, every moment of your life was simply designed, co-created by you and all the other souls involved? You guys don't think you know what you're doing down there? What if every moment and every joy and every sorrow was created by you simply as an opportunity for you to demonstrate, to announce, to declare, to express, to fulfill who you really are? Do you think that such an idea might change your life? And the answer comes back, of course. So I would share with you what I've come to call life's magic question. When anything is going on in my life, something unpleasant, something pleasant, something wonderful, something not so wonderful, or even something seemingly innocuous, having no particular emotional content whatsoever, but just something that's occurring. When anything that's reasonably significant in my life is arising, I've come to ask myself life's magic question. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? So the last time that I had a little disagreement with my beloved spouse, I looked across the kitchen and I realized in the old days I would become very defensive, or at least protective, if not defensive. These days, I simply look across the room and think, wait a minute. There's more going on here than meets the eye. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And the answer almost immediately comes up for me. Oh, I see. And if I can step into that answer in that moment, the moment itself and life itself changes. So that's been my experience with life's magic question. My father used to ask me life's magic question when I was 9, 10, 14, 16, 18. He asked me the same question, maybe 150 or 250 times. I could still hear his voice asking me the question. Who do you think you are anyway? I don't think he meant it as a metaphysical exploration. But he was asking me life's most profound question.
Mm.
Who do you think you are? And when we step into the highest answer we could ever imagine to that question, life suddenly takes on a meaning that it may never have had before for us. And suddenly this whole journey, this whole escapade begins to make sense.
Thank you. Wow, great question and great answer. Tough to follow that up, but so you talk a lot in the God solution about moving your higher power from a protective power to a productive power. And I grew up in a situation where my higher power, it wasn't a productive higher power. I was very fearful, my higher power. And what ended up happening for me was it caused me to be sort of a very, very fearful person. And so at a young age, I felt like I was actually addicted to fear. When I hit a rock bottom, I got introduced to heart math, which is this technique that Leah and I use for the Heart Coherence Collaborative, where we breathe rhythmically through our heart, and then we move ourselves into feelings that feel good, like appreciation, gratitude, wholeness, bliss. And when I started doing that, I felt more connected to God just by practicing this technique. So you talk a lot about God as a feeling in the God solution. So I'd love to just hear you talk a little bit about God as a feeling, because it's my experience personally that when I'm feeling fearfully and have God as a protective God, I am very fearful and detached from God. But then when I move God to being a productive God, and I start practicing feeling good, I feel very connected to God.
I think that the biggest problem in the world today is that we have misdefined God.
Mm-hmm.
We've created a definition of God, those of us who believe in God, and once again, that's 8 out of 10 of us actually believe in some sort of higher power. But most of us have defined God as the biggest, most powerful entity in the universe, and a God who loves us for sure, but who is just as certainly judgmental, condemning, and punishing. So we've actually called it an attribute. We've decided that it is a good thing to be a God-fearing man. He's a God-fearing man. So, and that's supposed to be good. We're supposed to fear God. Because if we don't do what God asks and, if you please, demands of us, and by the way, the list of God's demands is enormous, as given to us by the world's religions. Mm-hmm. There are certain things we don't dare do that would seem to be almost irrelevant. Like we have to wear certain clothing. We have to make sure that certain parts of our body are covered, maybe even from head to toe, depending on our gender. There are certain foods we're not supposed to eat, certain words we're never supposed to say. So, the list of things that we have to do or cannot do is almost endless. In case you think I'm exaggerating and making this up, let me share with you that when I was 9 years old in the 3rd grade, I was told that if I missed Mass on Sunday, I was raised as a Roman Catholic, and I was sent to a little Roman Catholic school. The priest said in a catechism class one day, he was defining mortal sin, and he was telling us the difference between mortal sin and venial sin, which is a kind of a spiritual misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. And so he said, mortal sin, of course, the children thought, okay, killing somebody or stealing someone's life savings or, whatever it might be, pretty serious things that you shouldn't do. But then the priest said, well, actually, it's a mortal sin if you miss Mass on Sunday without a good excuse. And if you were to die on Monday in a car accident, God forbid, but if it should happen, you will go straight to hell. And my 9-year-old mind is trying to take this in, a God who would be so offended that I missed Mass one Sunday of my life.
Yeah.
that I'd be sent to hell
Mm.
for eternal damnation. By the way, I'm not making this up either. This is Roman Catholic doctrine. Check it out. So I better get to confession in a hurry, because if I do go to confession and the priest forgives me, then I'm absolved. I've received absolution. Now I remember the day that the priest is telling us this. It was a Wednesday during catechism class, and don't you think that I was racing down to the confessional? But they didn't have confessions in our parish on Wednesdays or Thursdays, or just odd times. Saturdays were the days for confession. Now I'm hoping, how am I going to live through till Saturday? What if I do, in fact, get hit by a car between now and Saturday? I mean, this is how my 9-year-old mind put together what this grown man is telling me. So, of course, people grow up fearing God, and then not only fearing God, but fearing every aspect of life, all the things that could happen. So it's perfectly natural that we would live in that place of fear. It's only when God explained to me, oh, sweetheart, 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 do you really think that the highest power in the universe would cause you to spend eternity in damnation, suffering, and hell because you did something that somebody told you was a rule that you cannot break? You know, I remember as an 11 or 12-year-old boy, I thought that self-pleasuring would send me to hell.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up to feel about my own body. So, of course, it was revolutionary for me to hear from God. So you've misunderstood me. You don't really know who I really am. So in the book, The God Solution, I offer the solution to humanity's biggest problems. And the solution is to change our definition of God, to decide that God is pure love. And pure love means a love that requires, demands, hopes for, asks for, needs nothing in return. We can't even love the person on the pillow next to us in that way. I need nothing in return. I want nothing in return. And of course, I demand nothing in return. I don't love you in hopes of what I can receive back from you. I love you because you're utterly, completely, and totally lovable. And the greatest joy of my life, the greatest bliss of my life, is to give my love to you, needing and demanding nothing in return. Now, when I say that would solve the world's problems, I'm not kidding. Because if we adopted that idea of God and brought it into our own life to the degree that as humans we can, it would change, you understand, the entire foundation, humanity's morality. Because right now we're imitating God. We're actually told that we're made in the image and likeness of God. So of course we love people in the same way that we imagine that God loves us. We love people with judgment, condemnation, and punishment. It's going on right now all over the world. Either you do what I need you to do, either you do what I say, either you respond to my demands, or you will be in hell, and I will put you through hell. But if we decide that that's not how God acts with us, then our whole infrastructure, our internal moral system changes. And we decide to, what if we decided to behave with others the way we've now come to understand that God behaves with us? What if we decided to be the epitome of pure love, even in moments and with people, my dear Leah, with whom it's most difficult? It would change the world overnight. So it's really quite simple. And there's not much more to add to that. That's just the formula that we've been looking for, or that I've come to call the God solution. Because the God dilemma The dilemma that people have here on this planet with regard to God is, Neale, by the way, if I've heard this once, I've heard it 1,000 times. Neale, if there really is a God, and I get that you think there is, so if there really is a God, why is the world such a mess? And why has it been such a mess for thousands and thousands of years? We can't seem to get it right. If there is a God, why doesn't God just solve it? And I have to say to them, she has, not once, but 100 times. He's told us very simply what we are invited to do to solve humanity's problems. We simply need to decide to epitomize who and what God really is, rather than what we've been told that God really is. Shakespeare, of course, understood this perfectly. Shakespeare, one of the world's great metaphysicians, wonderful play, Hamlet. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. So we are invited to ask ourselves a powerful question. Is it possible, just possible, that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about ourselves, the understanding of which would change everything? Now, if our answer is no, Neale, we understand all of it. It's right there. It's in the good book. It's right there in the good book. Just read the book. Oh, the Upanishads. Yes, of course. No, not the Upanishads. Oh, the Quran. Yes, of course. No, not the Quran. Well, then what book? Oh, I see. There are 436 holy scriptures. Oh, I see. I'm beginning to understand the problem here. We can't even agree on who and what God is, what life is really about, much less who we really are, until the day comes when we can. And that's the day when you decide that when you step out of your house and step into the world, even step out of your house, step out of your bedroom, when you step into life with anybody else, you see it as an opportunity to announce and declare, express and fulfill, become and experience who you really are. Watch the world change around you.
Thank you, Neale.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was such an amazing conversation that we would love to do again with you sometime. This was incredible. And thank you for your influence on Leah. She's such a huge fan, and how touched she's been by you just means a lot. So this has been a dream come true for both of us.
Well, I can appreciate what you're saying about Leah and how it's changed and touched her life. It made her happier, because when Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Nobody happy.
That's why I love you, Neale.
We all have to keep our sense of humor.
Right.
I always tell everybody, let's enjoy a good laugh on yourself.
You have to. I think if God is a feeling, and laughter's got to be in there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Laughter, God solution. Next book, Neale.
There you go.
Not a bad idea. That'll come after She Saves Spiders.
Yes.
Well, you're going to be busy then, so
Yes.
we'll look forward to those books.
Yes.
Anybody watching, go check out The God Solution. Read it. It's amazing. And
The Essential Path too, which is I was really happy to read those together. And we just thank you so much, and we're sending love to everybody.
Thanks, guys. It was wonderful to be here with you. But I'll be angry and probably never forgive you if you don't invite me back again.
yes.
We would love that.
Yeah.
And we would love, there's so much more to talk about, but that was so perfect. And there's a couple of things in there from reading these books. There's been a couple of things I've installed into my life. And one of the things you said, I'm going to do that as well. So more to come. Yeah.
And we would love to schedule a follow-up interview to go more in depth about the God Solution and the Essential Path, because they are amazing. And we have like 100 more questions. So
Well, let's make sure we do it again then.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much, Neale.